Hey y'all, Caitlin Albritton of Caitlin Albritton Jewelry here today, and we're gonna keep it real quick and dirty with some techniques I like to do when I'm doing concave cabochons, because we don't want them all lumpy, and that's really hard to do. So I have to thank Susan B for giving me the idea to do this tutorial, and also for her generous donation towards my video fund so I can make even better, crisp, cleaner, lapidary tutorials coming up. So I hope you guys enjoy today. All right, so getting right down to it, I have 3 different ways of doing these concave cabs. So you can pick whichever technique best suits the project that you have. I chose a really soft slab and made 3 different concave shapes for practice, ranging from softly to very concave. I think a softer material, like think 3 to 4 on the Mohs scale, will be better practice since it's harder to get a nice curvature since it cuts so fast. I honestly don't even know what this stone is that I'm using, but it's very porous and soft, so it's perfect for this tutorial. So the first way of doing this is by using your typical 1-inch wheel on your cabbing machine, and I'm starting with the 220 diamond wheel. This is actually the method I use the most for the complex shapes that I use in my figurative inlay pieces, like the one here. I like to use the edge of the wheel and carefully cut along my template line. I typically feel more comfortable using the left edge of my wheel for some reason or another, and then feeding that left edge of the stone into the corner, and then gently moving the stone across it. What's most important here is have your forearms braced in some way, whether it's tucking your elbows into your body or resting your forearms on the table, or if your machine actually has little rests on it. You'll notice as I rough in the initial concave shape, I'm stalling a bit so the stone has time to cut more in the center where there's more material that needs to be removed. I wouldn't necessarily say that I'm pressing harder on the wheel, but let's just say it's the typical pressure you'd put on the wheel if you were to cut convex curves or even straight lines on a cabochon. The next important thing to do to refine that shape is to keep the motion across the wheel very fluid so that the stone cuts evenly across. I've also let up on the pressure so less material is removed so I can focus on really refining that curvature. If I see a higher spot that I need to cut, I'll go back to just before the bulge and then lightly run the wheel across that. Sometimes I'll do a few extremely light touch passes over it to kind of even it out, but I don't worry too much about perfection at this stage since you can always repeat these techniques over your 280 resin wheel, where I do mostly all of my shape refining from there. Before I move on to the second technique, I'll cut some big gouges in this deeper curve just to show you that any mishap can be fixed easily. I first take a look and see where my highest points are to tackle first. I'm going to start with the little hill that's in the deepest part of this concave shape and slowly whittle away at it until it starts evening up with the parts next to it. Notice that I'm always moving in the same direction when I'm cutting. On this wheel, it just is a lot easier. Then I can start evening out the curvature, heading towards that right edge. Now, since most of my fixes are happening from the center outward, I felt like it was best to switch over to the right corner of the wheel to fix the slight curves on the left-hand side of that concave shape. And okay, I may have done a little back and forth here, but I don't do that too often. You can see here that it's starting to smooth out, but there's still areas that need to be evened out more. And depending on the stone hardness, you can either finish that on this wheel or on the resin wheels. Moving on to the second way to do concave shapes, I'm using a 1/4-inch carving wheel, and this is 220 diamond. They also sell 1/2-inch sizes, but I think the 1/4-inch has a lot more flexibility as far as your projects go, because basically you can do anything that the 1/2-inch wheel could do with just maybe a little bit more practice to get used to that. What I love about these wheels is they don't have corners like the inch wheel, so the softly rounded edges at the sides of it really help achieve better inward curves. Here I made some uneven lines so I can recut, showing you the same technique of targeting those high spots and then gauging how much pressure to use as you run your wheel across the concave shape. On this wheel, going back and forth across a section is a lot easier since you don't have the sharp edge of that 1-inch wheel risking gouging your cab. And honestly, a lot of this comes with practice. I think a big reason why maybe it comes a little bit naturally to me, I have a background in painting and drawing, so I'm used to analyzing small details and doing that precision work. But really, anyone can master this skill, I promise. Just give yourself that time to play around and find hand movements that work the best for you. All right, and we're already on the last and third technique. I like to use this if I have super tiny concave shapes that I can't really reach with my inch wheel or even my 1/4 inch wheel. But I could see you trying out this technique if you already have the diamond bits on hand, but you don't really want to buy the 1/4 inch wheel because things can kind of get pricey after a while. These are 80 grit diamond bits from Jade Carvers, and I'll have more details on this and other equipment in the description below. And I'm using it with my jeweler's flex shaft, but a Dremel would work just fine too. So clearly my setup isn't as fancy as others that have like a drip system going on, but I find that using a bowl of water and keeping the bit submerged or keep dipping the whole piece in water after a few seconds of work keeps the heat and dust from happening. So it's no big deal if you want to do this. Because the setup kind of forces you to hold the stone in one hand and the grinder in the other, it becomes a lot harder to find a way to brace your arms. But Susan B came up with a great idea of maybe using, I think they make these kind of jigs that hold your flex shaft horizontally at your bench. So it'd be like having a mini grinder that would leave you with both hands free to hold your stone. Another option would be to use something to hold the stone itself, like the moldable plastic that jewelers use to hold their jewelry in place while they set stones, and then you'd have your hands free that way. Then the cutting technique is pretty much the same as the other two ways though. I start by just removing material evenly to get closer to the line before refining that line by gently running the bit back and forth across the high spots to even things out. If my template line gets cut away, I might even use a permanent marker again to re-emphasize the curve so I can actually see what I'm cutting. The last thing I want to go over is how to choose the best wheel for the job. I always like picking a wheel or bit that is slightly smaller than the opening of the concave curve you're trying to cut. When it comes to these diamond bits here, all of them are probably too small for this project and this particular curve, but you'd want to choose the largest bit possible in order to make the most seamless curve. By choosing something too small like that other one I grabbed here, you have more chances of getting weird lumpiness because it's a lot harder to carefully control this smaller bit across such a large curve. I'll have a lot more details in the description below, but if you have any other questions, want to donate to my video fund, or just want to say hey, please leave a comment below and make sure to subscribe to my channel for more lapidary and metalsmithing tutorials that I have in the works. Thanks for watching and happy cabbing, y'all!